Welcome back. That's me again, Brian from Echo1 USA. And in this third part video, I'm going to go ahead and take this Echo1 M14 EBR or RIS, and I just chronoed it and it's shooting about 300 FPS. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to upgrade it now, and this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the Echo Max torque motor, the Ultra Piston. Really good gear set I like. Really good for feeding and strong. Put this in my RPK, a Mad Bull bucking, and a 140 spring. So I'm going to go ahead and take this all apart and start upgrading it and show you guys what I'm doing. Okay, now for the gearbox, since I got the gun all taken apart, what I'm going to do is go ahead and take out stock gears, which are okay, but the 140 spring, they most likely explode. So here's the gear set. I really like this part because it pulls back just about any type of plate, plenty of time, and how it's just designed, it's really good. Let me pop this in. I already took some shims out when I was looking at it. So let me just go ahead and put this together. What I'm going to do is just hold, kind of press the gearbox together, and I can move it with my finger. If it's too tight, like if you had too many shims, you won't be able to move it at all, even though it's not screwed together. So I'm going to go ahead and put some more screws in there and see. Okay, do the shake test. I don't know if you can hear that. You can hear them rattling around. It's okay, but not good. And I'm using like a pick. Gears spin nice and easy. Kind of looking through there. But it's not good. So what I'm going to do is poke on all of the axles. Okay, notice if I poke on the sector gear, it raises up. Poke on the spur gear, raises up a little. Bevel is nice and tight. Well, not tight, but there's no play. So let me go ahead and open this up again. Shimming a gearbox is one of the most time-consuming parts of airsoft tech work, just because you have to do over and over and over until you find just the right balance of shims on one side and the other, and make sure they're all meshing. Anybody can throw parts together, but if you can't really shim, you can have the best piston in the world, but then when you have your gears break and teeth go flying everywhere, your piston's just going to get chewed up, and oh well, it's not really good. Let me just use existing shims. There's already one on the bottom. Let me just put one on the top just to see. Put one on the top there. Kind of thick. Put one there just to see as well. A lot of trial and error when you're working on the gearboxes. Just double check. No rattle now, but it's much it's a little stiffer there. I can still move it, but it doesn't have a rotation. Okay, when in doubt, use some shims. Right now I'm using some GMP shims. I like them. They're really small and thin. You have like the 0.2 and the 0.1s. Modified shims are really good as well, but I've just been using the GMP ones forever. And yes, it's not Echo, but I've been using them for a while. Kind of stuck on them. Pop that out. I don't know if you can see that, but if you compare them, you can see the difference. There's that little extra material cut away does go different. Just good. Now I can get rotation and no rattly, clinky noise. That's really good. Yep. Okay, I'll just say that's good for now. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead, since the shimming is good, I'm going to go ahead and put the motor in and make sure that the motor and the gears are able to run smoothly without like any problems. Okay, now if you look at, I put the motor in, but I noticed that the spring, like for like the AK series, a smaller one, it's not going to quite work, so I had to use the stock spring, which is wider, to fit around to stabilize the motor. Also noticed that you have the motor plate just rattling around because the motor's not able to go back all the way. And if you look closely, you'll see that the cage is actually hitting, well, not the cage, the motor is actually hitting the cage, vice versa. So all I have to do is cut that out. Otherwise, my range of motion for the motor is middle and all the way up. And that's not good. So let me go ahead and cut that real quick. What I did is I took a Dremel tool, cut a little here and here on either sides of the motor cage. So now I have, that's just loose. Now I have more motion with the motor compared to before, which was this to that. You know, now I can move it all the way up, all the way down. And also on a side note, the reason why I cut on the other side is to make room for the brush spring. Many a times, if you have the brush spring touch the cage or anything like that, you can short out either your trigger contacts or your motor and just cause a gun not to work correctly. So you always make nice. The gearbox assembled with just the bevel, the spur, and the sector gear. No reversal latch. Reversal latch, piston, cylinder, spring guide, nozzle, all that stuff is outside. So I just have the gears, the bushings and shims, of course, and the motor with the motor plate. So I can still adjust if needed. But I notice it's kind of tight, and that could be due to the larger motor, maybe. I can press it up, but it doesn't spring back. So I'll have to go into that. But now I noticed that these connections, this one's soldered on, this one's pressed on with a little socket. So it's like, what happens if it doesn't work? So if I spend all that time soldering everything, well, I like to cheat in the tech department. So let me go ahead and plug this in and see if it works fine. If anybody knows where I got this little trigger switch from, it is from an airsoft gun. Hit me up on Facebook, and I got some BBs coming your way. Okay, let me go ahead and plug this in and fire. Sounds really good. Let me go ahead and apply some grease, and I think that would be, I think that's really good setup right now for the motor, and the gear sounds really nice. So let me just grease it up. And okay, I just took apart the gearbox, took off the motor after I ran it with some black Echo gear grease, and I noticed that it's all evenly spread out. It did kind of fly off with centrifugal force, but I put on generous helpings just to see if there's any like weird void marks of grease. Like if you have it shimmed too tight, it will scrape the grease off, but if you have it just right, you have this little cushion of grease right here. It doesn't really do anything, but it's a clear sign of like saying, hey, you did good shimming. If it's bad, it scrapes off and you'd hear the noise, and plus you'd see smooth metal, you wouldn't see any grease, and then later on you'd see shiny because it's basically just rubbing. So this is good to go. Let me go ahead and start putting all the parts together. Next will be the piston. Okay, I did some more testing and I found out that I can't just install the modified piston because this is a super old version where it has the piston head bolted in there and with like a little screw in the back, kind of like a Marui or whatnot, but not as good. So I just added a polycarb piston head, and that'll be fine. And I went ahead and installed it, just cranked it down. I didn't Loctite it yet, but I will. And I also took off second tooth, about half of it or so, just so that it meshes a little better. Basically, it will spin, and it touched a little, but it would have worn down if I tried to shoot it. But I just don't want that plastic debris to get cut off and then going in the gears. So I just cut it so it grabs like that and pulls it back. Now if you notice, for some M14s, or it depends on M14 and the piston you're using, notice this pile of grease right here that got kind of scraped off the gear and on here, but you don't see anywhere else. Say if you use any other piston, aftermarket, or even like a stock Echo one from an M4, if you have pieces of plastic like for the rear tooth in this section, it will get in the way of the spur gear. If you look closely, you'll see how the spur gear kind of sticks up into the piston area, and you just don't want that to hit. Many times if you put in your piston and you fire it and you make sure everything's all correct, it only goes here and stops. You hear click, 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 and you're like, oh crap, something's broken. But don't worry, it's usually, if you take it out, you'll notice like a chunk right here taken out. All you have to do is get a Dremel tool, or if you use a square file, you can just go along the space like so. The Modify Ultra piston already has that done for you, just to basically drop into just about any gearbox. And then also for aftermarket pistons, you want to make sure that the piston rail here and here does not squish aftermarket pistons. Like if you use a good example is a super core piston, those are really good, but those are a little too thick, so you have to either open this up more or on here. Depends on what you want to do, if that's going to be your primary gearbox or if you just want the piston to go through its life and then get a new one. So that's another thing you've got to check out for. But this one, I already put it in, ran it real quick, hoping to find that, but then I remember it doesn't do that. So let me put it together real quick and show you another trick I did. So I have stock parts, just pop this in. Being that it is the older Echo EBR series, it will not work with a standard Marui based upgrade nozzle kit. It looks like it will, but it's actually off by about 2 millimeters. You might be able to make it work if you jimmy rig something, but then all that time and effort, what happens if it busts out? That's why we have the repair kit for these. And for Captain Vermont, I'm just going to go ahead and give him some of these, and hopefully with these videos he'll be able to pop it in down the road later on if he needs it. And if not, I'll be here to help. So let me go ahead and pop this in, line it up, scoot it a little. There you go. Make sure it's lined up on the rail. Have it play can move freely. Also check the corner and the corner. That's crucial. Make sure it's not out of place. Oh yeah, and here is the grease I was talking about. If you see, if you can see like the spiral sort of the grease from being rubbed off of here, it's not really rubbing, but it's just enough to get smooth. And this little ring here is from the spring of the reversal latch. That's good. I already put about 500 cycles through it, just plugging it in with the stock spring. Let me go ahead and put the stock spring back in. I haven't upgraded it yet. So let me go ahead and, right now I just have the gears and the piston head. Everything else is stock. So I'm going to put it together, and in my other videos I point out how it's difficult to line this up. If you try to line it up, you're like, oh, I have a bushing that came out and everything. That's why I told you guys I usually cut this cylinder hole right here, so now I can get to it easy and take it apart. So let me restart, because otherwise if you do it the hard way, it just takes forever, and it'll make your, if this is your first airsoft experience of upgrading, very miserable, and then you'll not like airsoft because of that reason. There we go. And good. This does help. Otherwise it's, I think in my other video it took like 2 attempts. Let me just put this on now, out of the way. I don't have the spring on. Let me just double check. I will press on piston, scoot it back, moves freely. It's not being bound up like I was saying earlier for the rails on the gearbox. If the piston is too tight, if you press back and it's like sluggish to go forward, that's not good. Otherwise when you're shooting, you're going to strip out your piston. Okay, let me go ahead and finish putting this together and shoot it real quick. Okay, now these wires really aren't red to black, but you'll hear a click if it's wrong. Okay. That's actually pretty good. Sounds nice. Oh. So far this is a Echo LiPo, and then gear set torque. I think it's like a 19 ratio. Ultra piston and stock spring. So that's fine. Just want to shoot and make sure it sounds good. Okay, now I'll put it all together with the 1/4 spring. Okay, now I'm going to grab the modified S140, which is like an M140. Basically, I'm going to go ahead and real quick compare. About the same overall length, a smidge longer. This could be squished a little just from age, sitting like if you have the spring all the way compressed back, but it is much, much stronger. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Okay, now this will be a little trickier just because there's more spring to deal with and it's harder. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same trick. Oh. Okay. Okay, notice now with the harder spring that the cylinder head's being pushed up. So that's one thing that's going to be more troublesome. Okay, well I have a trick for that. It's called patience, trial and error. Okay, let's see what happened. Huh. Okay, when I used the giant LiPo, looks like the only thing that happened, all the teeth, yeah, it looks like the only thing that happened was the motor lowered, hence that loud screech noise. So, and I had it on the lowest setting. the razor just a smidge. Should work fine. Okay guys, I put it back together with the 140 spring installed, the Modify Ultra Piston, the polycarb piston head, the Echo gear set torque, and the Echo Max Torque short motor. What I did is I took apart the motor housing, added some red Loctite to the motor set screw, and now let me put this back in. Now it's good to go. So I'm going to do, the next part is I'm going to modify for semi-auto, put the gearbox back together, drop it in the gun, and test fire. And then after that, pop in the new bucking. This has been Brian from Echo1 USA. Thanks for watching. Oh, before you leave, check on the links below to subscribe to my video, and then also to check out a Team Black Sheep page, which is also giving away an M14 similar to this, but not as epic, but it's still epic. It's from Call of Duty. So check down the links right there. Actually, right there, and then right there too. Okay, this has been Brian from Echo1 USA, and thanks for watching.